is a progressive town, and that's what makes it so terrifying. Spoilers if you aren't up to date. My last review of the show, I mentioned how Derry was a progressive town. I got enough comments like this one that made me realize that I have to put you guys on to the historical context of the show, because the ways that we perceive and label things now are so different than how you would in 1962. So let's get into it. Welcome to Derry is set in the year 1962, 2 years before the Civil Rights Act, and only 2 years after the first school was integrated with Ruby Bridges. Giving you those dates to give you all perspective of where Black people stood during that time. We're still asking for civil rights. While we see acts of racism, particularly with Hanlon and his family, and Sweet Ronnie and her father, freedom that we see Black people have in this show is leaps and bounds further than any of their counterparts in the South. So much so that they make note of it. When Leroy first encounters racism at work, his boss is sure to tell him that it's not the South and they don't really tolerate that there. The fact that Derry is so progressive is what makes the racism that we're seeing on this show so nefarious. There's a moment during the argument between Charlotte and Leroy where he's telling her, hey, you need to be careful here too. Because Leroy understands what type of woman Charlotte is. I feel like he believes that she's going to be even more bold because they're in the North. And I found that comment about, oh, this is one of the most bigoted towns in media, being used as an argument against it being progressive, really funny, because that shows that you guys don't understand how often and deep racism goes to this day. New York City is one of the most progressive and diverse cities in the country. This was the front page cover for our legacy newspaper. Racism from progressive people is so much more insidious than it is in the South, at least for me. I think it's a perfect vessel for horror because unlike the South where they will outright say how they feel and spew their hate, the racism you feel around progressive and liberal people is kind of more like a tingling sense. Like, look at my boy here in this shot. Everyone is staring at him here, and you can say it's because he's the new kid in town and they're all bullies, but we all know it's because they're like, why is there a Black person in my classroom? It's the plausible deniability that makes this so insidious and scary. Because if our sweet baby boy was to confront any of these children and be like, I see the way you look at me, they can immediately say that he's crazy. Even scenes like this, when we saw Charlotte dare to defend a child getting beat up, the reaction of the town members serve as a warning to her. Stay in line or we gonna come get you. While yes, in the South, they would have dragged her off right there. It's that perceived freedom that makes it dangerous. As for this time, Derry is 1000% a very progressive town. But being progressive and racist are not mutually exclusive.